I hate My Adventures with Superman. I hate it far more than a man my age should hate anything produced primarily for an audience of 9-year-old children with severe brain injuries. Plural, per child. Making this show, quite incidentally, the rough equivalent of the Teletubbies. And yet, I simply cannot help but hate it. For My Adventures with Superman is so close to what I would like to see in a Superman show. Clark is clumsy, nervous, and not really all that good at this superhero thing yet, but he means well, and lets nothing stop him in his pursuit to be the good guy. Even risking being late to his new job because he just had to save a little kitten stuck in a tree. This so nearly perfectly echoes the Dean Cain Superman I praised in the Why We Need Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne video. But in every other respect, it is the worst, most superficial current thing interpretation of Superman ever. Now it is tempting to start the critique with the pandemic levels of race swapping. It is, unironically, quicker to list the characters that haven't been race swapped than vice versa, as Superman remains white, mostly because any show that changes him wouldn't survive the pilot episode. Amanda Waller is still black, and that is also the reason why she hasn't been changed, and Lex Luthor, the villain, is also white. Any other character you can think of? Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen, Perry White? Just assume they're a different color, and you'll be pretty close to the truth. But it is the current year, and an obsession with race is pretty much part and parcel of living in socialism in decline, making it so everyone is gay, everyone is diverse, and everyone wears a hijab, which also, by the way, brings us the gay bestiality subplot. No, seriously. There is a plot in there about a man wanting to stick it in his favorite gorilla so much he gives it the intelligence required for consent. Again, progressivism progresses. And so at this point, I really don't have to explain to you why this is stupid, or why this is a negative and damaging thing. So let me instead move on to complaining about how the show spectacularly fails in telling the human story. I went on about this for a good 50 minutes in, again, the video explaining why we need Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne more than Superman and Batman. About how telling the human story allows for scope and scale, where you can have Clark fret about his date with Lois and also worry about intergalactic monsters trying to eat Earth. Providing not only a far greater variety of stories you can tell with the same characters, but also a much deeper attachment to those characters as we can see our own struggles in theirs, which makes the whole world-saving thing all the better, as the person doing the saving isn't simply just a 2D comic book character with 2D comic book character problems, like kaijus invading New York, but rather a more regular human character who worries about dry cleaning and meeting up with his girlfriend. My Adventures with Superman attempts to do this. Heavy emphasis on the attempts, as it does so in the same hyper-shallow way it does everything else. Let us begin with the secret identity, shall we? This is one of two major human problem generators for Clark. Those two being his relationship with Lois and his efforts to keep Clark separate from Superman, as Clark needs to continuously find ways to maintain his secret identity while still operating as Superman. It also provides him with a steady stream of moral dilemmas and concerns. Do I risk revealing myself in order to save this person? Do I tell Lois? And how do I deal with Lois being obsessed with Superman and not Clark? And it also, of course, places the focus on Clark, making him the main focus, the main character, and Superman the alter ego. But instead of taking advantage of this massive font of interesting plots and ideas, the show blows through it at a speed that would leave Superman with deep and enduring penis envy. You see, Lois starts suspecting Clark is Superman in episode fucking 4, and proves it in episode 5. And how does she do this? By reasoning it out? By connecting the dots? By meticulously going over all the clues? No, she throws herself off a building, forcing Clark to either watch her die or reveal his single greatest secret. A secret he holds not just for his own safety, mind you, but for the safety of his parents, for in essence, everyone he loves or ever will love. For him, revealing this secret is a thing of enormous significance. It is quite possibly life or death or worse. The idea of enemies using those close to him against him. Not to mention, of course, that if his identity is leaked or revealed to the wider world somehow, he is done for as a human. He will then always be Superman. No privacy, no career, no life. The implications and consequences of revealing his identity carelessly are enormous. But Lois needs to know. Fuck your safety. Fuck your family, fuck your future, and fuck your life. A woman has determined that she wants to know something. The sheer callous selfishness of it all is staggering. Especially as she never debates with herself for even an instant about whether or not she should confront Clark about this. Not for a moment does she think maybe this is a secret best left alone. Oh, no. In fact, she gets mad at him for not telling her sooner. At this point, they've known each other at most for weeks, possibly days. It is genuinely aggravating, and the fact that the show passes this off as if Lois was completely in the right. Oh boy. But to move on, as I could spend a lot of time on this, on the topic of secret identities, there is, of course, worse. Jimmy Black Olsen, you see, he knew that Clark was special since the first day he met him. He figured it out instantly. But hey, at least Jimmy Olsen decided to leave the secret be. I suppose that's a plus in his book. And hey, you know, part of me feels like I am making mountains out of molehills here because this is the retarded version of the DC multiverse, where Clark sends pictures of himself as Superman via fucking text message from his own account. This, incidentally, during the part of the storyline where the government is actively hunting his blue ass. But here's the thing. The reason why this isn't simply just a dum-dum to be ignored, a stupid to be passed right by, is because it speaks to the problem with the suspension of disbelief in modern entertainment. If both Lois and Jimmy can figure out what Clark is within a week of meeting him, how, by Clark's kryptonite cuck cage, am I supposed to believe that nobody else has figured it out. That the United States government's super-secret weapons program can't unravel this mystery, nor can Lois's dad, the ex-boss of this program who lives with Clark whilst hiding out from Amanda Waller. Anywho, having thus discharged one barrel in the back of Kent's head, the show swiftly moves to place the second load of buckshot in him too, as the relationship with Lois Lane is resolved in seconds. Again, remember, this is the second big problem generator. Clark trying to get Lois to like him, and Clark trying to get Lois to like him more than Superman, and going out on dates with her. Well, there's none of that in my adventures with Superman, because the two fall madly, head over heels, let's break beds love the very picosecond they see one another. Then they have one fight, which lasts for all of 20 minutes, then they're back to sucking faces, and this kind of just keeps going. This romance has about as much depth and build-up as the one between the horny housewife and her pool boy. Christ, Jimmy Olsen and Kara's romance has more substance, as theirs at least requires a whole 2 scenes together before they start anime blushing at one another. And God, does that effect look just so remarkably cheap and horrible. Anywho, on the topic of Lois Lane, or Luz, as the people making this show are categorically creatively bankrupt. Literally, same character by the way, same appearance, same behavior pattern, and everything. But anywho, character assassination does not begin to describe what they have done to Lois Lane. Now, listen here. I love me some brown tomboy as much as the next guy, more probably, but despite her admittedly valiant and valuable addition to the Rule 34 section of the internet, this Lois Lane is in every other way a downgrade the likes of which we haven't seen since Coca-Cola took the Coke out of cola. See, Lois is supposed to be an opposite to Clark. The whole opposites attract, remember that? Where he is the naive and awkward little Kansas farm boy just entering the journalist profession, and she is the accomplished, big city career woman, driven, sexy, assertive, and cutthroat. Whilst this Lois, she's an intern, still chasing her first story, and the best part of it is, she only gets her first story, Superman, because he wants to plap her. This is the equivalent of Peter Parker taking pictures of Spider-Man, except worse. At least he knows what he's doing, whereas Lois, the only reason why she even becomes a journalist is because God delivers her a Kryptonian. I mean, for the love of the blue balls of Clark, Lois's primary sources when she first meets him are literal children selling a homemade newspaper they want to bundle together with the Daily Planet. And boy, is that a lovely metaphor for this show in and of itself. A poor, current year imitation of a greater work desperately seeking to ride its coattails to some resemblance of fame. Lois only gets a career and the title of journalist because of Superman. And without him, she would probably have been fired from the Daily Planet. But at least she's sexy, right? That's what the memes say. Well, sort of, in a cute tomboyish way. But there is no intent there. And this is a rather important point. The sexiest Lois ever gets in this show is when she takes off her jacket. And this with no intent to seduce or anything, mind you. This is not a conscious decision. She merely wants to have her arms free, that's it. Whereas previous versions of Lois, well, they use their femininity as a weapon to get the story. This is another point of them being far more driven than this Lois. This tomboy Lois is eager, sure, she's energetic, but that is not the same as driven and determined. Whether it be Lois from the animated series or from Lois and Clark, these Loises are willing to use all the tools at their disposal. If looking hot will get them an interview with Lex Luthor, then great. And that is what they will do. Simultaneously, however, if looking like a greasy dock worker will get them the scoop on smuggling activities down by the waterfront, then that too is what they will do. To put it in a bit more of a pithy and summary-esque way, these other Loises were women, whereas this Lois is a girl. And to be fair to the shit sandwich, Lois is far from the only downgrade. Oh no. She is in amply awful company. Deathstroke, for example, the grizzled old super lethal weapons master, well, he's replaced by a child who evidently pilfered all of his mother's hairstyle products and then decided to try to make himself look like the anime characters he saw on the television. Or Livewire, God help me, one of those classic designs from the glory days of the DC animated style. Her design was so good, she was created in the Superman animated series, and in this she is replaced by what I am 98% sure is just some boy, presumably somebody who walked by the DC animated studio set one day. Somebody looked at them and went, Livewire, I guess. Oh, and on that note, this is supposedly Heatwave, by the way. He's a butch lesbian now. Because... Yet, no matter how objectively awful these redesigns are, they are far from the show's biggest problem, as that would be the storytelling. The show seems absolutely determined to blow through any hint of actual human problem or connection. Superman's suit, for example. In most of the originals, it was made for Clark by his mother, adding a lovely familial touch to the character. The brilliant scene where somebody looks at him like, wow, I like your suit, and he goes, yeah, thanks, my mother made it for me. That is a fantastic Superman-esque moment. Whereas now, it's just a magic spacesuit that occasionally unlocks new superpowers when the plot demands it. And as for the Kents themselves, I made the point that in the Lois and Clark television series, the Kents were in every episode, grounding Clark and tying him to his reality as a Kansas farm boy first and a superhero second. Well, in this show, the Kents are, of course, barely in it. I think they make a grand total of 4, maybe 5 brief appearances in 2 seasons, and only one of those episodes is at least tangentially focused on them. They play virtually no part in Clark's life here. Which, of course, also takes away that other human side of him. And even the biggest problems in the show, because you could argue that the Kents were always a secondary thing, sure, fair enough, but let's take Kara. She has been murdering billions of creatures, under the de facto mind control, to be sure, of Brainiac, but even so, this is completely ignored. She is a mass genocider on a planetary scale, and she pouts about it for about 5 seconds and then moves on. It's forgotten about and done with, figuring at first that Brainiac is just malfunctioning or something, a slight bug in the system, no doubt. You would think that she would at least struggle a bit with the whole genocider of worlds thing, but no, not really. And hey, Not like Kara has a monopoly on flexible morality, as all the bad guys who have been terrorizing Metropolis and causing God only knows how much damage and death ends up joining forces with Superman and Kara as they solve the Brainiac problem the same way all inferior hero shows solve their problems, by punching him. Or, well, actually, it's not entirely true. It's an anime now, so first they have to believe in one another to recover from a bit of mind control, and then they need to shout a bit to unlock their next level up, and then they punch him. And therein lies the final big problem. It is just an anime. But with worse voice acting, worse animations, worse characters, and infinitely worse character design. And unlike previous Western animes like Avatar, which borrowed heavily from Japan but still established its own visual style and universe feel, My Adventures is just anime, except with none of the soul or the passion behind it. Like how Superman's new powers stem from anime plot convenience rather than the sun, as he powers up with a blue flash of light and some shouting whenever the plot requires it, even to the point of having uniform changes in response to aforementioned vocalizations. Hell, the only thing stopping Clark from putting super babies in Lois is the classic anime trope of the two people in love hearing a conversation and misunderstanding one another constantly so that they can argue for an episode or two before getting back together again, only for the next misunderstanding to slip neatly into line. And that is hardly the only anime trope. Lois is the genki tan tomboy for the MC to play tongue twister with. Clark is the socially awkward audience self-insert with the weight of the world on his shoulders, and Jimmy Olsen is the otaku best friend that provides comic relief. It is shallow, uninspired, and really only makes me wish I was watching any other actual anime instead. And I heartily recommend you do the same. Or if you are really starved for Superman, the animated series is still out there and pretty damn good. Or better yet, Lois and Clark, if you can stand the certainly somewhat outdated style and storytelling. As no matter what you watch, it's probably going to be a lot better than My Adventures with Superman. Until next time, I have been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.